For some perspective on this, we're joined by business development and investment expert, Dr. Nnaemeka Obiereri. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Why is it looking like always the language that the government quickly responds to is strike? In this case, did it have to get to this point?
You know, it's very, very unfortunate, because if you look at the demands of the NiMET staff, these are very ridiculous things that shouldn't have even resulted to them going embarking on industrial action. Increase to minimum wage of 70,000 naira, which is equivalent of $43. $43 is 2-hour work of a housekeeper or a domestic staff in the US. And it's so painful how we've gotten to this level where what we agreed to pay, even what is not even take-home pay, by the World Bank standard, anybody living on less than 110,000 naira income per month is regarded to be under the poverty threshold. So basically, even the minimum wage is under the poverty threshold. Yet they are finding it difficult to pay them. And of course, you saw the other excuse. Rather than organizing requisite training that will enhance their capacity, they are busy organizing high-level retreats. We in this same country, certain MDAs travel to the UK to guide the whole retreat that will have held at Obudo Ranch or any other place in Nigeria. That is very despicable. That's unacceptable. But thank God that they've called up the strike, because it crippled a lot of aviation activities in Nigeria. But such should not be allowed to repeat itself again.
Indeed. One wonders, though, if these issues have over the years been brought to the fore with some force as they should have. And to add to that, I have searched since the news came up that the strike has been called off after the meeting with the minister. But there doesn't seem to be any clear statements from the federal government as to the demands of the workers. We just know that the strike has been called off, but we don't know what the resolution that led to that. We don't know the resolution that led to that. You know,
we are very quick to call out this strike because the aviation industry is at the heart of economic activity in Nigeria. Of course, because of the insecurity in Nigeria, the roads are no longer passable. So, of course, you saw that Air Peace called off operation, and of course, it disrupted aviation activities. And most of the elites who purport to govern Nigeria fly around because they can't even afford to take the roads, knowing fully well that without those guys being at work, Air Peace and other airlines will not fly. They quickly had to call this meeting. But we'll just pray that this does not repeat itself again. Because I'm very, very sure if it was other agencies, they wouldn't have bothered. We've been on incessant strike over the last 15 years, ASU and the federal government. How governments of the day cannot just keep to fulfilling the simple agreement they reached with their public servants, which are less than 1% of Nigerian population, is something I know nobody can actually fathom.
Doctor, while praying is something we do very well here in Nigeria, the heart of my question is, do you know perhaps the reason why it was called off? Was there promises that the demands of these workers will be met, or it's another effort to just keep them calm, get the business going until the next round?
Your guess is as good as mine. The governments of the day, not just this government, even those in the past, have shown clearly that they don't understand what it means to keep to agreement and fulfill their own part of the bargain. And like you said, prayer is not enough. We just hope that this is not just a gimmick to get these guys back to work because of the key roles that they play in the aviation sector. We want to believe that they will go back and implement the agreements and not allow this kind of thing to repeat itself again. It does not speak well of Nigeria as a country.
We cannot foretell if this will happen or it will not, but we've seen the disruption that the strike caused in the aviation sector, even though some airlines went on, Air Peace did not. Are there perhaps some contingency plans that organizations like NiMET can put in place so that when they choose to take on such public protest, it might not totally crumble the aviation industry?
NiMET was established by Act of Parliament in 2003. Unless we are trying to say we should establish another agency that will kind of act as ad hoc if these guys go on strike tomorrow. But why would they go on strike? if their welfare and agreements are kept. Is it not the government that wake up to promise minimum wage of 70,000? So why would they be begged, cajoled, or forced to fulfill just basic obligation? And when we talk about minimum wage, 70,000 is not even a take-home pay. I have said it here. Poverty threshold, World Bank poverty is 110,000. So anybody in Nigeria any less than 110,000 should actually be on food stamp. And yet, despite the fact that we are not paying these guys living wages, yet we can't fulfill what we promised to fulfill. It's tragic, it's unacceptable, and such will not be allowed to happen again.
Aside prayers, I think the other thing that scares us is consequences. Please paint us a picture what a prolonged disruption of services by NiMET could cost for the country if these issues are not dealt with once and for all.
We work in a nation where governments do not work with statistics, we do not work with numbers. For an economy like Nigeria that is hemorrhaging, 24-hour strike by NiMET, disruption on the aviation services for one day will cost us tens of billions of naira in terms of revenue and economic activities that are crippled. You know, if we are a country where people sit down to evaluate consequences and implications of actions, such should not be allowed to repeat itself. But we don't appreciate it, we don't appreciate manpower, we don't appreciate what productivity is. That is why today we have sunk from a $363 billion economy in 2023 to one that is $188 billion. From number one in 2014, we are now struggling to even retain number 4 position as the biggest economy in Africa. It is so tragic.
Yeah, it is indeed.
Like I always say.
Quickly, though, in 40 seconds, if you can. I mean, some of the comments from NiMET employees that we saw today was quite disheartening. It seems the morale of the employee is down. How quickly will a resolution of their issues improve the welfare and morale of the workers too? Some said that their salaries can't even pay for their children's school fees.
But we are saying the same thing. There is no civil servant in Nigeria, even to the grade level 16, that can honestly live within the limits of his lawful income without doing things that are unethical. What we are paying in Nigeria is nothing to write home about in terms of minimum wage. I've always advocated. The problem we have here is that we have refused to do the right things. Like in the education sector, a government that understands the power of that sector should not pay anything less than 500,000 naira as minimum wage for those in the teaching profession. But here in Nigeria, we pay peanuts and we expect excellent performances. That is why we have a lot of migration out of Nigeria. Today in Nigeria, for you to even see a radiologist, it takes days and weeks. Most of them are leaving Nigeria because they are poorly paid. An average doctor here takes home about $500,000 naira, whereas his mates in the UK, the US takes equivalent of $16,000, almost 40-50 million naira every month. How do you compare that?
But unfortunately, we do hope, though, that now that the federal government has stepped in, things will calm down and the employees will be a bit more relieved. Thank you very much for speaking with us.